good evening. Welcome to the March 9th regular County Commission meeting. Do I have, I'm sorry, ma'am, Reverend Harriet Cross?
May we bow our heads, please? Father God, we come to you, the creator of heaven and earth, humbly and grateful for who you are. We place before you all the requests and petitions and concerns for our beloved Brevard County. Bless each and every person here with your wisdom and your knowledge and understanding and the ability to apply it to the needs of our and to the benefit of our county and our state of Florida. And we ask this all in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen and amen.
Amen. Thank you, ma'am. We have a quorum. I'll call this meeting to order.
Please stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are moving into resolutions. Commissioner Smith, I think you have the first one, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my honor tonight to recognize the distinguished citizen, and we have his family here. So if you guys would like to come up, you can stand by the podium. And Donna, when I'm done, you'll have the floor so you can speak, say whatever you want, and if anybody else has something they'd like to add, it's all yours. Whereas, the residents of Brevard County lost a valued community leader on the 22nd of January, 2021, with the death of former Commissioner Ron Pritchard. And whereas, born on the 31st of July, 1944 in New York City, he became a resident of Brevard County in 1994. And whereas, while Ron Pritchard was Brevard County District 2 Commissioner from 2002 to 2006, he served as Vice Chairman and Chairman of the County Commission. Whereas Ron Pritchard was an instrumental force for saving both Patrick Air Force Base and Canaveral Air Force Station from base realignment and closure, adopting a new sexual offender ordinance, the addition of a boat ramp on North Banana River Drive, creating the Lori Wilson Dog Park, and placing the 1,000 islands in Cocoa Beach under conservation protection. And whereas a recipient of the Cocoa Beach Chamber of Commerce Hometown Hero Award for 2001 and 2002, he was a supporter of community and government organizations serving on the Tourist Development Council, Economic Development Council, and a host of others. For example, Citizens for Florida Waterways, Republican Executive Committee, Merritt Island Executive Council, Keep Brevard Beautiful, and he was a charter member of the North Merritt Island United Methodist Church, just to name a few. Whereas he is survived by his wife Donna, children Rob, Kristen, Wendy, and Christina, and 6 grandchildren. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, join in honoring the life and memory of Commissioner Ron Pritchard and express our sympathy and condolences to the members of his family. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 9th day of March, 2021. Madam Chair, I move to approve this resolution.
Second, Lober.
I have a motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Lober. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
The floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm Rob. I'm Ron's son. Really, we're honored to be here, and we appreciate you taking the time to recognize Dad. It's always hard. A lifetime of service. I don't think I can really add much more than what you added there, Commissioner Smith. I appreciate that. The Air Force, the Fire Department, glad to see fire here represented. Dad for 27 years, retired Deputy Fire Chief of Fort Lauderdale, before moving up here to probably the best coast in the state of Florida, and serving as county commissioner. He was awful proud to serve in this commission. He was awful proud to serve the people of Brevard County. He did his homework. He enjoyed what he did. He was very proud of what he did, and we were all very proud of him. And we honestly hope that the legacy and what continues is that dedication to service, dedication to the people, and to what makes this county and this state great. So appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to take a picture, and we're going to give this to you. So everybody turn around and face the guy with the yellow tie. There you go. Okay, everybody get in close. You got everybody? Yes, sir. Okay.
We have one more resolution. Would Mr. Matthew Behringer and his students come forward? How are you, sir? I'm going to read this resolution, but real quick. I was able to serve with you on the Titusville City Council for many years. And I appreciate all of the work you're doing with your students and teaching them about how important it is to be involved with government. And I saw y'all's video. It's really wonderful. Good job, guys. Whereas juniors at Astronaut High School, Taylor Rendina, Paul Henry, Matthew Champagne, and Jacob Johnson have received recognition by completing school-based projects that address the substantial issues with pollution in Indian River Lagoon and how, with the help of government, this problem is being addressed. Whereas these students have worked addressing the problem in the Indian River Lagoon by researching how the problem has occurred and demonstrate how faith in governmental action can lead to the restoration of the Indian River Lagoon. Whereas the lessons delivered through the creation of this project are critical to teaching about the dangers and impacts of pollution on the Indian River Lagoon and negative impacts on human, animal, and plant life. Therefore, now be it resolved that this Board of County Commissioners does hereby recognize and congratulate Taylor Rendina, Paul Henry, Matthew Champagne, and Jacob Johnson for their outstanding efforts in putting together this documentary. And we congratulate you and wish you the best moving forward and all the things that you guys will put your hand to. I make a motion to approve this. Second. Second by Commissioner Zonka. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Would you guys like to say something? No? Yes, please.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
It'd be nice if they're that quiet in class sometimes. Number one, for the commission, thank you for recognizing a body of work from our students. Very often, one of the biggest challenges of our education system is connecting education to a real-world challenge. And what I'd like to say is, number one, thank you for recognizing students that did that. Second, there is a day where we all pass the baton, and I know as I get older, I realize how vital it is for that next generation to be ready. I'd like to say that through the work of Brevard County, commitment to the natural resources, and when you talk to high school students about how much carbon or how much nitrogen can you pull out of the river per dollar, there's a very nice plan that's laid out there. And this is the body of research that they were looking at in order to address this issue. So that one day we all leave, they take the baton. So thank you for recognizing the value of that passing that's going to happen, and specifically out of one of our public schools out of the north side of the county. So again, that's appreciated, and thank you for taking the time to recognize these young people.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
got a little something for you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like pulled?
Move to approve.
Have a motion to approve consent?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Zonka. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, passes 5-0. I had a request to move item J7 to the front, so I'm going to go ahead and move that up there. Commissioner Tobias, I think this was yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a transfer of the public safety funds, and before we begin, I just wanted to give some background as far as where the numbers are. I had these all checked by, in fact, given to me by Ms. Jill Hayes. So these are staff numbers, not mine. There's currently 22.432, $22,432,904 in the public safety fund. $2 million of that has been allocated by the board for vaccination. There's $37,041 for additional mortuary coolers, $94,120 for courthouse cleaning costs, and $40,730 for some tent rentals. This leaves $20,261,003 unallocated. I want to be very clear. This does not include, in other words, there is another pot of money containing about $11.6 million for Tier 1 for the fire department. So that is completely separate from the money that I would like to disperse at that point. None of that will be touched should any of these motions go through, to be very clear. So the first one is dealing with approximately a third of that, and that is with the EOC. We've talked about this quite a bit. To put in perspective, we're looking at roughly about a $14 million project. It's clear that this certainly would fit under the public safety fund. The Brevard EOC, as you guys all know, is the most activated in the state. It's used everything from hurricanes to rocket launches. It's most certainly a critical expenditure. Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Zonka, and I have slept on the floor there and know how specifically wonderful it is. So I would like to, with the board's approval, allocate 1/3 of the unallocated funds of the public safety towards the construction of this new emergency operations center. That is approximately $7 million, just under $7 million. The motion would be allocate 1/3, and Jill wanted the exact number, or approximately $6,753,668 of the unallocated remainder of the public safety fund to the construction of the new emergency operations center, and authorize the county manager to make any necessary associated budget changes. Madam Chair, I have more information. I've spoken with the sheriff. He will be more than willing to discuss the advantages, specifically, but not necessarily only, consolidated dispatch. So that's the motion, Madam Chair. I'm more than willing to take questions or move forward at your discretion.
Okay, sir, I do have light on. So 1/3 goes to that, and that's keeping the 2/3 with the Brevard County sheriffs, correct?
Madam Chair, that would be the secondary motion. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I wanted
okay.
to bifurcate those.
Perfect. I got numbers when you put it on the thing, so.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, yes, sir. Commissioner Lober.
I've got a few thoughts, and I appreciate where Commissioner Tobias is going with this. And I think at some point in time, I certainly would support this amount and perhaps more going to the EOC. My concern, though, is regardless of where it's coming from, we have a set pot of money that we already have that was sent to us to deal largely with the impacts of COVID. I'm not saying that this isn't a good use of the money. I think it may be an excellent use of the money. It may be the best use of the money. But my concern is that we not act too hastily in allocating this. And I would specifically suggest that we wait until we're in a position where we're at least closer to having herd immunity in the county. The fact is, I can tell you out of the D2 pool of $5 million that came out of the 105.3, one of the very first allocations that was made was to the EOC, specifically to help with this particular objective. So, it's not that I don't appreciate that, but I think if we spend anything at this point out of the public safety fund with respect to the EOC, it may be premature. My understanding is we have about $5.5 million, and I'm rounding rather liberally here, committed to the EOC already that we have available. So in order to get us to a point where we can construct the whole thing, we would need another 14 to 15 million based on the estimates that I've seen from staff. So we would need somewhere between 19.5 and 20.5 million in order to get to a point where we can construct this thing the right way. I do understand, though, that if we had about 9.2 million, so 9.2 million, we could put the shell up, get the windows in, get the AC in, but for us to do that, I can tell you, I grew up in Seminole County. I'm a lifelong Central Floridian. In the 90s, what they've come to call the I-4 eyesore was put right off of Altamont Springs by the overpass on I-4. It is still not complete. There is a skyscraper, certainly by Altamont Springs standards, that has had the shell up for decades at this point. I don't think it makes sense to put a shell up. If we end up adding to the $5.5 million, if we get 9.2 million to put a shell up, I think we're still acting prematurely with respect to that. I think we do it all at once. We go in there and build it the right way, and at least get it so that it replicates or enhances all of the existing functions that we have at the EOC that's presently there. So down the road, if we're in a better position where we're approaching herd immunity, as I was mentioning earlier, I wouldn't have a problem necessarily increasing it from 6.7 and change million to upwards of maybe 14 million if that's what we need to do in order to get the EOC done the right way. But it's not that I don't like the idea. I think it's an excellent idea. I just am not ready to do this kind of an allocation this early on. But I do appreciate the suggestion from Commissioner Tobias.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate the perspective from Commissioner Lober and the priority that you've put on this, the $500,000 that you allocated. As I'm sure you're aware, the federal government, in its infinite wisdom, decided to allocate another $1.9 trillion. According to staff, this means another $118 million. Now, I'm sure there are all sorts of strings attached to this. We don't know how it's going to land, but the president has indicated that he would sign it. So there is more money coming, number one. But let me tell you the reason why I think now would be a great time to allocate these funds. We're at the beginning of the state legislative session. The budget process has already begun. Part of the needed $14 million is a little over $1 million from the state. When our state senators and state representatives go up there and say they have 11.5 or 12 million of the 14 million needed to construct it, it makes that $1 million ask that much more palatable to the rest of the members. So I would advocate that now is a great time to do it. Session started, as you guys know, at 60 days, and the sooner that we can put it in that pot and give our senators and representatives a little more oomph, I think that's probably the way to go. So I think that's why the timing is appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Lober?
Just real briefly with respect to that, I don't necessarily disagree with your estimation that we are going to receive substantial additional funds. And I'm not great with these axioms all the time, but there's one that goes something like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So I'm not confident enough to put my subjective level of risk tolerance with expecting that money to come in on the limited funds that we have left. But certainly if we can get $1 million out of the state, that is definitely a factor that bodes in favor of what you're suggesting. I just don't know that that with respect to this, that it all the same when you consider the fact that we don't have that additional money yet, that now is necessarily the time. I would ask, though, and again, with respect to this, in all candor, I'm probably not going to support it either way, but I would ask that any motion that you make with this also request that, or be made with the understanding that we're not putting up a shell. I mean, certainly that would have to come back before the commission anyway. I don't think that's remotely within the authority that staff has unilaterally. But I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page if what it is that you're proposing goes through, that we not put essentially a hollow shell up.
Madam Chair? Sorry. Yeah, I would, and I appreciate the perspective, the aesthetic perspective, but I'd be more interested in an engineering perspective. And if an engineer was able to say that it's not structurally sound, or there were other issues, then I would take that in. But as far as an aesthetic perspective, I think that may be a good impetus for us to finish through with that $1.5 million or $2 should it not arrive. And as far as the herd immunity, listen, I'd love us to get there, and I think the board has put that as a priority and allocated $2 million to help get those shots in the arm should they come through. And again, that is outside of this funding, so that will not be impacted one way or another.
Commissioner Zonka?
That's exactly what I was going to start with, was that this funding is not going to impact it or at all cripple our coronavirus response efforts, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's about time we show the legislators that we're serious about the EOC, because we've been asking them for money for years, and now we finally can demonstrate that we're using this money correctly, and we're in dire need. I mean, you only have to spend 12 hours in the place, not even 24 hours, to see the need to get that place up to where it should be, considering how important it is. So I'm okay with it.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see both your arguments, and I think both are valid. And everyone here has heard me say at one time or another, don't spend what you don't have. But in this case, we do have the money, and we do have the need. And I can tell you, I'm never going to be chair again, so I don't have to worry about spending another night in that EOC. So, but if you've ever spent a night there and the hurricane's blowing outside and at 2 in the morning all the bathrooms stop working, it's not a good place to be. So I think it's imperative that we move forward on this as quickly as we can. I think this money is timed perfectly for us. And I don't know that putting up a shell that's going to sit there for 20 years is a possibility, because, quite frankly, if we get the shell done, the shell's not going to be put up by this summer. And by the fall, or maybe a little after, if we can start breaking ground then, we should have sight of other funds to finish the job. So I think we need to move forward on this. And I want to commend Commissioner Tobias for his insight and thinking outside the box to get this done. So I'll be in favor of it.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It sounds like we have the vote, so I don't want to go too far, but I did want to ask the sheriff he was kind enough to show up to talk about the potential cost savings of consolidated dispatch, because my understanding is this is where it would be housed, and we could see some cost savings once it was constructed. With your permission, Madam Chair.
Oh, absolutely. He's got a gun.
And I got backup. So. Madam Chair, thank you. I first want to applaud the commission for considering this. I think there's several other people in here, Matt and Chief Scholmeyer and others, that could speak just as well about the need for the EOC. Our side of it, the unified dispatch, is certainly something that we've been working for. It benefits everybody, both on the law enforcement and the fire side. We see our building that we're in, right at 60 years old. We're trying to hold things together with it, but having the ability to have a unified dispatch, having the space to do it, the ability to put the right technology in there is going to benefit everybody, create a seamless delivery of services on both the fire and the law enforcement side. So moving forward with this EOC project, and I do understand Commissioner Lober's position on this and his thoughts, but moving forward on this project, I think, is paramount when you consider that we have, I believe the last time I knew, we had the second most activated EOC in the country. when you look at the things that our EOC did just during COVID-19. Their response, I think, was spot on, certainly had great direction from this commission, but I think when you look at the ability for us to, all the hurricanes were impacted by, the launches, the unexpected things, I think we've got to move forward on this project. And we are, I know part 2 of your motion is coming up about our part of the Tier 2 money, but we have already collectively talked, our chief deputy and our chief financial officer, and we're going to take some of our money. In fact, about $2 million is what the county manager and I have talked. Take $2 million of the money that was set aside out of the 2/3 for us and put toward this project as well. We believe it is extremely vital to the safety of this community.
That's substantial.
So,
Yeah. Sheriff, did you say the building was 60 years old?
Our facility is 60 years old. Our
That's a pretty young building.
yeah, it's
I'm joking. 'cause-
Some people went to middle school there. I think Frank was one of those, but I don't want to talk about his age at this point. So, yes, ma'am. But we're very blessed. You guys have worked with us very well, and I think moving forward on this project would benefit everybody.
You're a wonderful sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Tobias?
That's it, Madam Chair. Motion's on the table. See, hopefully get a second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Regretfully, nay.
Okay, passes 4-1 with Commissioner Lober and a regretful nay. Commissioner Tobias, you still have the floor, sir.
Okay, hopefully this will be the easier of the two. This is an allocation of the remaining 2/3. But before I get there, 2 thank yous. Number 1, to the sheriff for graciously putting forth a substantial portion of the money that is hopefully going to be allocated to him for the EOC. But a personal one to Miss Jill Hayes. This $105 million, whether you like how we split it up or not, it fell on her shoulders, and I cannot imagine anyone doing a better job than what she did. And my heart goes out to her because she reads that there's another $118 million coming down. Frank, I know you got her some help. I'm sure she's going to need even more, but it's a testament to your leadership, and all the time and effort she put into this has made this as painless of a problem as ever could happen. So again, wonderful staff that we have working through this. So the motion is pretty simple. It's allocate 2/3 or approximately $13,507,335 of the unallocated remainder of the Public Safety Fund to the Brevard County Sheriff to be used at the Sheriff's discretion for the purposes of furthering public safety, less $2 million, which shall be allocated to the construction of the Emergency Operations Center. The County Manager's Office is authorized to make any necessary associated budget changes. That is the motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. I motion to have a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Zonka. Commissioner Smith, your light's on, sir. Old light? Okay. Commissioner Lober, your light's on,
Just
sir.
a question, and I need a little clarification. I'm hoping to support this as well. You had mentioned, Commissioner Tobias, earlier that the prior motion would not impact going with option 1 with respect to BCFR. Is it your understanding that regardless of how this particular motion turns out, there would be any impact to our ability to choose between the options with respect to future funding for BCFR? Because I was a little confused as to how the earlier motion may have impacted that.
Madam Chair?
Please.
2 complete different pots of money. This is the Public Safety Fund. This is the $22 million that I discussed, less the $2 million, less the $140,000 or $50,000, coming to a total of $20,261,003. That is absolutely different from the $11.6 million. The vote on this will not change that $11.6 million $1.
Perfect. Yeah, and I heard that first part, and I must have caught it the wrong way, because I was not able to connect the dots, but apparently the dots don't connect, so that's a good thing. All right, perfect. I will
Madam
support
Chair,
this.
yes, the $6,753,668 and $13,507,335 equal the unallotted amount of $20,261,000. I'm not trying to pull a fast one on anyone this time, but watch out.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to move into public comments. I have one card from Avis Ann Furman.
Is this something I can put so y'all can see? Okay, I don't know how to do that, so.
I don't either.
Oh, thank you. Oh, this way. Is that right? Okay, thank you so much. And I want to thank you all for allowing me to speak.
You're Avis Ann Furman. I'm gonna say it
Yes,
for the record
ma'am.
for you.
Avis
Okay.
Ann Furman,
There you go.
yes. Okay, I lived out in Canaveral Groves. I think my husband and I bought our property out there approximately 44 years ago. And he passed away April 30th of 2019. And I recently had my fence brought in as where you see the outline there. That's the part I live in. And I had it resurveyed and everything, not knowing that I would not be allowed to have my daughter build on this other part. And that's what I'm trying to see if you all will allow, because it's almost the same size as mine. And when we bought out there, it was agricultural, and my husband and I were, I guess, not smart because we didn't know exactly what agricultural pursuit was. We did have goats, we had chickens, we had everything. And when we got rid of those, then we started growing muscadines on our vine, on our fence. And apparently it was complained on quite a bit. And so we were taking our agricultural part away. So I don't know if that's the reason the county's denying me to allow my daughter, because it would still be in the family.
Ms. Furman, I'll tell you what, if you would, my legislative aid's right there, you're my district. If you would go see him a minute, he'll get some information. I'll start doing a little bit of research for you.
Thank you so much.
You're
So
very
that's all I
welcome.
need?
Okay.
All right,
And
thank
we all
you.
would like to thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
I see that
It was
woman
my-
veteran U.S. Army on your hat. God bless
Amen.
you.
I certainly am. Thank you all so
ma'am.
very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Lober?
I just want to throw out for her benefit as well, if this is something that your district intends to push in that direction, I'll support you. So if you're able to convince our chair, you know, you've got me in the bag for that as well on this. Thank you.
All right, we are moving into item H1. Ms. Virginia?
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a public hearing for extension of the temporary moratorium on new applications of biosolids to lands within Brevard County. Biosolids legislation was approved by the legislature last year with direction to the State Department of Environmental Protection to develop new rules. Those new rules are still being drafted and have to return to the legislature once they're done. That hasn't happened yet, so in the meantime, we are allowed to continue to extend our moratorium.
Motion to approve and extend it for another 6 months.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, ma'am. Item H2. Commissioner Tobias.
Madam Chair, this is the open container ordinance that we had permission to advertise. To be clear, not one thing has changed since this was before the board 4 weeks ago. I think Commissioner Smith summed it up best when he said, quote, ordinance as it stands now really doesn't matter a whole lot. And to go on further, as conservatives, we believe less government is better government. This is literally less government, so he's correct on both regards. I don't need, unless it's needed, I don't need to hash over any more of the arguments. If anyone has any questions, I certainly would be glad to address them. But short of that, I would make a motion to repeal Section 6.2 of the Brevard County Code of Ordinances, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Lober?
Just real briefly, I did vote to support this earlier, and I'm going to basically flip on that. And I just want to take a brief moment to explain why I've changed my mind. I'm not necessarily going to twist anyone's arm up here to follow me on this, but I have had some communications with law enforcement officers that express some concern with respect to this. There are certain things that I know enough to know that I don't know, and with respect to the potential impact on law enforcement, I'm not going to second guess what I've heard from some folks. So again, if folks are comfortable supporting it, by all means, do what you think is appropriate, but I'm going to have to change position on this one, unfortunately. So thank you.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I mean,
I'm sorry, you made a motion, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Madam Chair. It was just repeal Section 6.2 of the Brevard County Code of Ordinances, Madam Chair.
Okay, can I have a motion to have a second? Motion dies for lack of second.
Madam Chair?
You can give it a shot, Commissioner.
Yeah. I goodness gracious. COVID has only brought the absurdity of this ordinance further into stark reality. While at the same time CDC is encouraging outdoor dining and social distancing, and restaurants are trying to accommodate this public health measure by using outdoor public spaces, our ordinance places penalties on such conduct. Now, here's where I'm disappointed right now that there's not a second, because there's clearly not support for Governor DeSantis, our extremely popular Republican governor who believes in free market principles, issued executive order, which I'll be more than willing to hand out here, 20-71 on March 20th, specifying lifting restrictions on serving containers on dining and on sidewalks. Unfortunately, our ordinance does not allow this public health and free market measure to have its full effect. Because a sealed container under the executive order is often an open container under our ordinance. For example, a cup with a lid is a sealed container, but that same cup would be considered an open container once it left the presence of that small business. This conflict leads to two results. Number one, putting citizens at risk of being charged because of legal confusion, or number two, not allowing businesses to implement public health measures advocated by, again, our popular Republican governor. There are other issues here that are very dangerous. Discrimination is one of them. I researched whether this ordinance is being used as a pretext to target minority residents in unincorporated Brevard County. And thankfully, that doesn't appear to be the case. In fact, quite the opposite. Of the 1,013 cases discovered by the clerk's office in which this ordinance was charged as a violation, 81% of the offenders were white. This is under the leadership of Sheriff Ivey, and however, Sheriff Ivey will not be sheriff indefinitely. If I looked at other jurisdictions to do this, there are many, many, many concerns. In fact, a judge looked at this and commissioned a study that was published in the New York Times recently, found out that 85% of summonses under an open container law were either black or Latino citizens, while 4% were issued to whites. This is a unique situation because it has no impact on home rule. This will have no impact on socialistic mayors in Cocoa Beach who want to restrict freedom and not open it up. There's issues of trespassing versus vagrancy. We can't limit vagrancy. It is unconstitutional to say you have to have a home. And that needs to be handled through social programs. The issues I've heard is trespassing, and trespassing is covered under Florida State Statute 810.09, describes criminal trespassing in an outdoor area among other offenses. And if there is an actual issue that needs to be addressed regarding trespassing or vagrancy, let's address that head on instead of using the pretext of targeting otherwise innocent behavior. Right now, it is a misdemeanor to have an open container of alcohol. This is our ability to make government smaller, to give more freedoms to people, and still have the same protections that were always in place against public drunkenness. Again, there's Florida Statute 856.011 that prohibits disorderly intoxication causing a disturbance. I understand the sheriff may not like this, but the sheriff is not a policymaker. He's a wonderful guy, but he's not a policymaker. That's our job to make policy and his job to follow said policy. And it's our opportunity right here to provide more freedom, more liberty, instead of restrict a behavior that we made legal in public parks. So guys, I'm very disappointed that a person that, and I assume it's the sheriff, I've got no idea, but it's amazing how there's a change in 4 weeks to restrict people's freedom. I thank you guys for at least hearing me out. I'll tell you what, I'll do one up for you. I've got a fallback here because I had a feeling that things may change. I would like to look at expanding the hours alcohol can be served. It's restricted by county ordinance. And I'll help you out here. I've talked to the sheriff on this one, okay? So you can call him. He is in favor of this one. Now, this is a little weird because this would help small businesses. So would the other one, by the way. Sorry, I'm just disappointed anytime that we limit people's freedom. I get very disappointed as a Republican. So, but anyway, that one's coming. Again, I appreciate your time. Sorry for the rant, but it would have been easier just to shoot me down at the beginning. Thank you.
Well, it was worthy of a thought, sir, so out of respect. Commissioner Lober.
Just real briefly, Commissioner Tobias, I'm not going to comment on where I disagree with you on some of the things you've mentioned unless you really would like me to do so. But what I will throw out there is if you bring back something that's drafted in a more narrowly tailored manner, there's a substantial chance that I'll support it. I would just suggest, you look to accomplish only the purpose that you've outlined without it doing anything else or having other unintended consequences to the degree that it could be prevented. But I still am open to considering it, again, provided that it's drafted in as narrowly tailored a manner as possible.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Commissioner Lober. I would be willing to look at that seriously. What were you thinking? Maybe open bars till 3 or leave it up to the bars themselves?
So, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Were we on the one that just failed, or
yeah.
He just moved over to the new one.
Yeah.
we moved to the new one?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking
You
about.
guys want to wait and speak to the sheriff on this one first?
No, I want to talk to you about it.
Because he'll give his opinion.
Well, I have an opinion on it.
Well, we found whose opinion took precedent.
I love the sheriff, and I listen to his opinions, but I listen to everybody's opinions, and then I make up my own mind.
Yeah, I think all of the chiefs also had input on that, the
Yeah,
local
see,
chiefs. So,
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Pye,
again-
I know, it was good, but, you have to take in consideration what kind of stress extra it puts on their job, too. And so, like Commissioner Lober said, if you can come in, maybe we can define it a little bit tighter, but I don't want to put
This was a strike-through. There was no definition. This was the repeal of an ordinance, to be very clear.
I know, but maybe
not adding anything. This was a
Maybe
repeal.
not so much. I think I am just delighted that you came through with another punch on it.
Conservative, less government,
Well,
more
I know,
freedom.
we're all conservative, but we're all different
Just
degrees.
don't vote that way. Thank you, Madam
Well, I
Chair.
know, but if we all agreed on the same thing all the time, we wouldn't all be necessary. So the different conversations are important. But Commissioner Tobias, you do have a little win here because I think you have some interest in extending the time as far as sales. So did you want to take that up right now, or did you want to bring that back for discussion, or?
Well, since it's ordinance, my understanding of ordinance would have to have permission to advertise.
Okay.
And that one, I was focused on one thing at a time, and, I'm a little hesitant, to go forward.
We'll let you bring it
before I
back
speak
later
with
if
the
you want
sheriff
to.
and decide where he is and exactly how he wants this crafted.
I'll just jump in and say I have a couple of perspectives here with regard to time of closing bars. One, I think from a law enforcement perspective, and I go back a lot of years, when I was jumping in bars was probably close to 50 years ago, which is older than most of the people I serve with here, so I have a different perspective perhaps, but I spent an awful lot of time when I was in college on the Jersey Shore, and all the bars there closed at 2 a.m., except one, and it was called Dunes Till Dawn, and it was outside the city limits of all the different cities around Atlantic City, and it sat all by itself, and they were literally till dawn. And so where did everybody go at 2 o'clock? All the bars emptied out around Summers Point and Margate, and they all emptied into Dunes Till Dawn. And the police that I knew then liked the fact that there was an outlet, because not all the drunk drivers or drivers that had been drinking were hitting the road at the same time. So this spread it out. So I think that would be the advantage if we did that here, and I think it's something to consider as well. So I would be willing to listen to any arguments or any thoughts you have, Commissioner Tobias, on that subject.
I think it's worthy of a good conversation. Yeah. Commissioner Lober, you're next.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts with respect to that. First, I'll just put it out there that it may be a surprise to Commissioner Tobias, but the sheriff is not the last law enforcement officer with whom I've spoken. I think he's the second or third to last, but there are other law enforcement officers, whether it be municipal or whether it be individuals in DCSO, putting aside the federal folks and the state folks for that matter. Now, I do agree by and large as a general statement, less government is definitely an admirable goal, and it is a conservative goal. But when less government means more criminality, that's not a conservative goal to me. The fact of the matter is, if you ask conservatives, and for that matter liberals as well, I think the average person, regardless of their political beliefs, how they rank public safety concerns, I can tell you that the plenty of statutes we have that deal with criminal law in this state, and the ordinances that we have that deal with things that may lead to that, or oftentimes do lead to that, the average person that you get out there, probably more than the average, probably the overwhelming majority of individuals you get out there support keeping all of the criminal statutes or substantially all of them on the books. It's not, well, that's more government, so therefore it's an anti-conservative thing. It's just a common sense support for our public safety in the area. So I do draw issue with the conclusion that less government is always a conservative endeavor, even when it may lead to more criminality.
Commissioner Zonka?
That was well said, Commissioner Lober. You won't hear me say that very often, but that was very well said. I don't go off the John Tobias meter of conservatism. I mean, you could look at any law in the books and say, well, it's a law in the books, so this is therefore government's big hand of rule, and we have to eliminate it. I have never once in over 4 years in my office ever received one complaint about this ordinance. Had I probably would have been something I would have looked more into myself, but I have not heard a complaint from a single resident who's ever been cited with it, or a business or anybody else. So it's not that I'm against, pulling things off the books that we don't need, but I'm against this political grandstanding and this ripping apart of other commissioners who aren't conservative enough according to one other commissioner's standards. It's pretty petty, and I'm not playing. Even if it, gives me a black eye in Commissioner Tobias' eyes. That's okay. I'll take it.
He seems to still like us after, though.
I think
Commissioner
he
Tobias.
enjoys this period.
I know.
Madam Chair?
Please.
One question, and this is just a fun one for Commissioner Lober. Do more criminal laws benefit or not benefit you as a criminal defense attorney?
At present, since I'm not actively taking on new clients, it has no relationship whatsoever. When I campaigned back in 2018, I campaigned largely on the premise that this would be a full-time job. So certainly until at least November of 22, it has no impact whatsoever.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to move to item 3.
Good evening, Commissioners. H3 is a petition to vacate a public utility easement, Hampton Homes Unit 7, 390 Needle Boulevard. It's in Merritt Island, District 2. It's requested that the board consider vacating a part of a 7.5-foot public utility easement. The petitioner is requesting to vacate a 3-foot portion of the easement to be vacated to remove the pool bowl as an encroachment. There's no drainage issues, and FP&L supports.
Thank you. Commissioner, what's your pleasure?
With respect to this, I move to approve the vacating of the 3-foot out of the 7.5-foot section as outlined by staff.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item I-1.
Board as it was tabled during the last board meeting regarding the purchase of a plotter for Utility Services Department. Upon conclusion of that meeting, we went out and put out a request for quote. We received 4 quotes back, all as outlined in the agenda item, with the lowest purchase price being $8,131 with an extended maintenance plan that spans 5 years for $3,000 for a purchase total of $11,131.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Lober, your light's on, but before you say anything, I want to just say good catch.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff for working with me on this one. I try not to make things unnecessarily difficult. I want to thank staff for working with me on this. They certainly have obtained some quotes. I obtained some quotes that were forwarded to staff. I will also, go ahead and take just a brief second to thank the other commissioners up here for having at least had a little bit of confidence in that there was a basis for my concern on the prior item. Things happen, and, we can't always catch them, but I just appreciate that there was enough willingness to go through a couple of extra measures in order to make sure we were doing the right thing at the end of the day. So thank you all. I'll go ahead and move to approve.
Got a motion? Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We're going to move to item J1. I've got 3 J items. 4 J items are going to go real fast, and then we're going to do the fire assessment, and then we'll do redistricting. So let's fly through a few of these here. I think they'll be fairly quick. Item J1.
Yes, Commissioners, this is a request to approve a settlement agreement with North Brevard Charities. We have 2 properties, 2 condos that were purchased back at the height of the housing boom in 2008 for acquisition and rehab that were being maintained by this agency. The upper unit burned out. The homeowners association was responsible for the shell of the building. The repairs to the roof were not permitted, and as a result have resulted in code fines that have been accumulating, currently over $300,000. This will do a settlement on the liens and mortgages that the county has in place with the agency for $61,513.64. Currently, the property appraiser has market value of the 2 units at about $26,290, $4,790 for the burned out unit, and $21,500 for the other unit.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a card by James Orth. Is this for questions only?
Ma'am, that would be for questions only.
Thank you.
Attorney that represents North Brevard Charities.
Thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. We're going to move into
Thank you.
J3 and J4 because I believe these are fairly quick pass-throughs as well. Is this you, Ms. Bentley?
This, actually, I'm sorry, this is Frank.
Oh, sorry, sir.
We actually have the representative from the Florida Development Finance Corporation, which is making the request for these 2 items for solid waste revenue bonds, as well as industrial
Yes.
development revenue bond for Roswell, U.S.
Commissioners, are you good on this, or you want to hear conversation? They're pass-through bonds?
Up to them.
I think we're good if you,
I'm fine, I'm just here, just in case you have questions.
okay?
So
Can I
do
have a motion?
Take the win.
I got a motion by Commissioner Zonka, J3. Do I have a second by Commissioner Smith? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. The same situation with item J4?
Yes.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Zonka. All in
Madam Chair?
favor? Yes, sir.
Before you call the question, just if I may have a brief moment. Just with respect to J4, I am going to support this today based on my conversations with staff and that it would not create any sort of liability for the county.
No, it's a flow-through for tax exempt.
With respect to this, though, I still have not gotten the answers to the prior questions that caused me to vote against the last item involving this corporation. So again, I'm going to support it, but only on the basis of the representation that this isn't going to create any potential liability for us.
Yes, sir. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, and now we're going to go to item J2. Did I do that right? Yes, fire assessment.
I don't think we have enough of them, Madam Chair.
What, sir?
I don't think we have enough firefighters, Madam Chair.
You look very handsome tonight.
They said we didn't carry guns.
Yeah, I know.
Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you for having us this evening. We do appreciate the time that we can discuss the fire assessment for tonight. Just a brief introduction of J2 as a follow-on from the recent budget workshop in which we received strategic preference from the board. This agenda item lays out the groundwork for the next steps in the fire assessment rate adjustment process. Board approval of this agenda item would move a tentative rate adjustment forward with final approval at a future public hearing. In specific, this agenda item requests board consideration for 3 actions. Action 1 seeks board preference for the approval of a tentative rate adjustment to the fire assessment with 2 rate adjustment options proposed. Action 2 asks the board approval for a draft notice to property owners. This statutory requirement informs each assessed property owner of their potential impact due to an adjusted fire assessment rate. It will list their current rate and proposed rate. Additionally, the annual difference will be stated in the notice. And it will be also noted that the example that we have in the agenda packet is for example purposes only, using a previous example. Action 3 requests the board authorization to schedule a public hearing at which time the final decision would be made on a proposed fire adjustment rate. We are requesting that this hearing be held at the regularly scheduled Commission Board meeting set for 20 April 2021. Florida statutes require 20 days from the receipt of the notice of property owners and the public hearing. Setting this date in April will meet that requirement and provide flexibility just in case there are delays in the mail system. One procedural point of order is the board tonight can go lower than a tentatively approved rate at the public hearing, but we cannot go higher than that tentatively approved rate without a renotice and another future public hearing, which then, of course, as we've talked about at the budget workshop, drives us into the June break and the effect for the FY21 budget. To satisfy this requirement, we will add the words "up to" in the public notice if anything is approved tonight. And with that, ma'am, we stand ready for any questions or concerns or thoughts that
Thank you, sir. I have one card, so I'm going to go ahead and call Mr. John Ditmore. Hello, welcome, Deputy Mayor of Melbourne.
West Melbourne, yes, John Ditmore, Deputy Mayor of West Melbourne. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight along with Mayor Rose and Councilmember Young. Is here. Our city manager was here, but he had a family emergency come up, so he had to leave. I'm here on behalf of the 10,000 plus households we have in West Melbourne and the businesses, 25,000 residents. Our city is paying right now about $5.4 million, or about $1,600 per call out for the fire services right now. Last year we had 3,397 calls, and it represents about 75% utilization of the one fire station that we have in West Melbourne, which they last year they had 4,640 calls. So we're using about 75% of the utilization of one station. With this increase right now that is proposed, we're looking at potentially $6.2 million cost to our city. With that increase in the build out and the coal that they're proposing, we're probably going to be pushing closer to $7 million. Now these numbers we got from our staff got from the fire department. These are not my numbers. These are actually which was provided for the fire department. This increase will result in evaluation of these services to do on our own. We should take a look at it. Other municipalities are doing multiple fire stations for nearly half of what the cost we're paying. Except for the cost of the capital outlays, we could probably do this for $1 to $2 million less per year if we did it on our own. The fire fees are disproportionate as they are for groups of square footage. They're not done by an actual calculation of the exact size of a building or a home. So for instance, I live in a 2,600 square foot house. I pay the same fire fee as someone who lives in a 4,000 square foot house. So it's a little bit disproportionate when they're doing it. And everything else is based on taxable valuations. I would ask that you, if you do consider doing this, that you consider doing a reasonable increase based on a proportionate evaluation. Say like 10 cents per square foot on an individual's home, rather than just by grouping them by different groups. That way it would actually, if I would pay $260 a year, someone with a 4,000 square foot home would pay $400 a year. Be more proportionate rather than the way it's grouped right now. So it's basically the cost of this is going up so much that it's going to actually force us into doing an evaluation to do it on our own, which then will probably create a shortfall as well for the county. Is if we pull out, because we're looking at $7 million probably here in the next couple of years, and that's going to cause us to look to do it our own. I will tell you, when I looked at this 2 years ago, the city of Rockledge was doing it for $3.4 million for 3 fire stations with full-time, fully staffed with their people. Now, that does not include their capital outlays, but that's what they were doing for 2 years ago. And we're at $5.4 million right now for, basically for need for one. So I just wanted to point that out. Very happy with Brevard County firefighters. They do a great job, and the city appreciates that. And this is nothing against them, but it's a matter of what we have to do to represent our people, to do the right thing. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, a quick question. We got some numbers on here, not for you, sir. It's, it'll generate 7.2 million on one of the options. So I don't know how that would be 6.2 million additionally to that city. Total? Oh, for your total cost altogether. Okay. So you're looking at a delta of maybe 900,000 over the next few years? Okay. Okay. Makes a little more sense. Commissioner Lober.
I appreciate that, Madam Chair. I usually agree with Commissioner Detmore or Councilperson Detmore. How do they? The Honorable Mr. Detmore, in any event. However, I do have to unfortunately part ways with him on this particular issue. I will say, though, regardless of how this goes tonight, it may be worth having staff look at doing it based on either living area square footage with a multiplier, or based on air-conditioned square footage, which most of the time ought to be the same, I would imagine, instead of doing these square foot groupings. That's news to me. Aside from that, though, I think one of the important things to keep in mind, and to me the operative words, if there really were any from Colonel Wallace's introduction at this, were that we cannot exceed the number that we go with tonight when this comes back at public hearing. Based, at least in part on that, I would suggest that if there's any ambivalence whatsoever, or there's any degree of being on the fence, that you opt for the higher number tonight, knowing that that's going to be the upper cap that we cannot exceed in the future. There is option 1 listed, there is option 2 listed. There's a third option as well. Actually, there are unlimited options if you want to look at it that way, but the third option that I would throw out there is barely different from option 2, but it would tie in, whereas option 1 is roughly analogous to the tier 1 that we were presented in the prior meeting during the budget overview, and option 2 here is roughly analogous to tier 2. Option 3 that I would throw out there is roughly analogous to tier 3. So it's really very close to option 2. It's almost like a 2+. So that would be about $6.15 a month to the average homeowner. It would generate $9,421,000 approximately. The percentage increase is substantial. It's 37.5%, so it's 2.5% higher than option 2, but I think that gives us more wiggle room, largely with respect to capital projects and being able to ensure that we stay on board with that. So I would go ahead and make a motion, whether it succeeds or fails, it is what it is, to approve action 2, action 3, and with respect to action 1, to go with this 2+ or 3 option, whereas we notice it for 37.5% increase, which would net approximately $9,421,000 and would be an approximate $6.15 $6.15 per month increase to the average homeowner, knowing that we're going to come back and perhaps look at a lower number, but that would at least set the upper cap.
Do you have a motion? Do I have a second on that motion? Okay, that motion dies for a lack of a second. Commissioner Tobias, you're next, but real quick before you do, as far as the rates, I've got them here in front of me, guys. I'm real comfortable with them. If you guys want to do something different, I mean, you've got 0 to 700, 700 to 1,100. I know the bigger houses, I think they all get the lower rate, actually. So I'm kind of comfortable with the rate scale. Commissioner Tobias? Ozanka. I'm sorry, who did I call? I didn't hit my button. Okay, Tobias.
You want to go first? Okay. First of all, I want to thank Mayor Dittmore and Mayor Rose for showing up. It's always nice when our partners in government show up to these meetings, whether you're with us or whether you're against us. Probably as a board, we need to show up more. And Mayor Rose reached out to me today, and I appreciate, no matter what side you are, that dialogue. I understand, we have a couple options, maybe a third. So sort of like Shark Tank, I wanted to take myself off of the table here. During this pandemic, I don't think it's the right time to raise fees above a specified index. And I looked for a fire index. I couldn't find one. I looked for an index that was anywhere near the ones that we're talking about, any federal index, and I couldn't find it. As of January of this year, the U.S. unemployment rate is about 50% higher than it was 2 years ago. This board has spent millions of dollars on food and rent assistance to mitigate impact on COVID for individuals who are not making rent payments. Meanwhile, looking at the commercial side of this, according to MIT's Sloan School of Business, small businesses have seen an approximate 40% decline in revenue. So I can't, with a good conscience, vote for either a 29 or a 35% rate increases. If anyone's got a index that is reasonable, I'm more than willing to look at that. Short of that, I'm more than willing right now to put out the CPI of 1.234%. But that at least takes me off the table on this one.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Commissioner Smith.
Mr. Abate, when was the last time we had an increase in our fire assessment?
I believe that was in 2018, and it was making up for the prior assessment, which was done several years earlier, where the board took a discount against the rate by 15%, if you might recall. It was reduced by 15% over at that point, and then in 2018, you made the decision to try to recapture that. And actually, last year, you were prepared, and the board actually gave direction, was looking to move forward to recoup the rest of the difference that was outstanding in that 15%. But with the pandemic, the decision was made to wait. That wasn't a time, for the public, with everything that we were dealing with, the public was dealing with, to increase that assessment. So held off, and we knew we were going to be coming back this year, and so that's where we are now.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was 2018. I just wanted to be sure. The monies that we're talking about here, when you don't have a job, $5 a month is a lot of money. But the other side of the coin is we have a responsibility to fund firefighters that go out at all kinds of hours and crazy situations and keep the folks safe and get their fires put out so that they don't lose their whole house. So I think that's part of our public responsibility, that we have to make those tough decisions, and I think this is one of those. So I'm in favor of an increase. I haven't quite decided yet which one I'm going to favor, but I know that we desperately need to do this. On many levels, we need to do it. So I'll leave it up to my fellow commissioners which one they want to pursue.
I remember when I got elected, we had to sit in those little meetings with all the departments, and Chief Schulmeyer, he took longer than everybody, and he gave a really long presentation, and through the whole thing, he kept saying, we're out of money, running out of reserves, out of money, running out of reserves, and I was like, oh man, where can we get the money from? And you know what, we still haven't given you any money, and you're still running out of reserves. And you know what, you guys need to have these increases. You do need to have the equipment, but it is a tough time. But I'm going to vote in favor of it just because I think we need to do something here because you've been strapped a long time, and you are valuable and you're doing a good job. It is tough, though. I mean, residential, it might be manageable, but then I look at the commercial, and it's a steep increase. So I'm willing to take the hit with it to do it. But I'm going to ask that we do it over by year 3. We get it totally up there, and we do the increase. It gets you all the funds. It'll really make things happier and get you the money you need to go. And by the time we hit year 3, you should have this fully funded moving forward. So I'm going to request that we do option 1. And not that it wouldn't be wonderful to catch y'all up right now, but, we got to figure out how to pay for it. So I feel I'll take the hit for you and do that. So that's where I'm at right now. Commissioner Lober?
Just real briefly, and Mr. Vacate, please don't remove my spine through any orifice when I do this. I know you're not going to like me for doing this, at least temporarily. But I'm going to have to ask you if you don't mind talking a little bit about how the report came back from our third-party consultant with respect to the suggested fire fees, because I think that gives folks a better understanding in terms of the fact that what's being proposed, even the higher-end option, is rather reasonable in light of what the current climate is. So if you don't mind, I would really appreciate that,
Now,
sir.
Commissioner Lober, you know that we all know this. Are you doing this for the public?
I think it's for the benefit of the public,
Okay, sir.
Madam Chair, yeah.
Outside of what you have in front of you today, Fire Rescue did engage, after the board authorized it, a consultant to look at another approach to methodology for the fire assessment. That approach would have substantially changed what the current rates are for a variety of classifications, both at the lower level. People would have seen a substantially higher increase just to be where you are today, and then whatever increase it would have been, whether it was 25, 29, 35, 39, whatever percentage increase, would have been an additional increase there. When staff looked at those numbers, this alternate methodology that was offered would have, for many classifications that are listed there, would have had very significantly higher rates than the 30 whatever percent rate or 29% rate increase that you see here. So that type of impact, I think, would have been throughout the community for a variety of commercial buildings as well as for a variety of residential buildings, would have had a much, much, much larger increase for a variety of property owners. Now, there would have been others that would have seen less, but when you saw that type of disparity, we, as from a staff level, looked at it, and we briefed commissioners, obviously, on where we were with that, and came up with continuing the existing methodology that was approved and was vetted by, at that time when the assessment was put through, by outside counsel that said it was a valid methodology approach. So we stayed with that one rather than look to an alternate one at this point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Zonka, did you want to chime in, ma'am?
And it's obvious to everybody probably in this room, but talk about, and not really in a negative fashion, of course, but talk about how our county department differs from a municipal department. I mean, I don't have to talk about wages or retirement or anything like that, but as far as services that we provide, again, it's obvious to most people in this room, but I think it's important to mention.
Yes, ma'am. The difference between what Brevard County Fire Rescue does versus a municipal or city fire department. That's where you're going with this?
Yeah.
So one of the biggest differences is the fire department services unincorporated Brevard for fire service. We in-service all of Brevard County for EMS, emergency medical services. Our fire department is about 35 stations, big, with about 500, 600 folks currently employed. So the magnitude of scale that we have versus the scales that we have in the cities are immense. The missions that we fight and the things that we do, for instance, from the COVID responses that we have. Our departments were the ones that were making entrances into the homes on an an infectious disease call. A 911 call comes in, and my grandfather, my grandmother has a potential to have COVID. Our department was the one, regardless of where the call came in across the county, we were the first crew that would PP up. We would go inside that house or that facility and make the first response to those citizens. So
in terms of, mission and organization, that's some of the biggest thing. We have that tactical level input on all our fire calls throughout the county.
And aside from the stuff we do dually with other municipalities and the transport, which is unique to only us, we ride everybody to the hospital. I mean, I think that gets lost a little bit, and as far as our mass coverage over the whole county, because the expectation from our department is always to assist, always to have that dual aid, and always to be the agency that responds in an emergency. Yet, again, I'm not going to go into comparing, the compensation or anything like that. I think that goes without saying.
Yes, ma'am. I think from a capability, Chief, the capabilities that we have.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is our fire rescue organization is unique in the fact that we are an all-hazards fire department. So you mentioned we have EMS, ALS transport throughout the whole county. So we take people to the hospital, not only just show up to the call, but we actually physically take people to the hospital. We have a countywide hazmat team that responds to hazmat incidents all over the place. We have lifeguards on all of our beaches. And, of course, fire suppression. We have wildland. So we do a lot more than just pet our dog on the front, our Dalmatian on the front porch and play checkers. So.
And how many millions of dollars has the county over the last, say, 5 years lost in transport costs that run not being able to be recovered?
Just this past year?
Just this past year, we wrote off $28 million.
$28 million.
$28 million. And those are transporting not just unincorporated residents.
Everybody.
Obviously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, I think we kind of already know where we're at here. So I think you're kind of still waiting. So Commissioner Zonka, I kind of need to know where you're landing here. So I think it's going to help us move forward, ma'am.
I don't know. I mean, ramping up as far as the fire assessment, I don't know how that works as far as ramping it up over 3 years. I mean,
I don't believe that's what was being referred to. I believe was being referred to is how that money is utilized within the department to address
Right.
issues within the department.
that's what I figured.
Yes, ma'am.
So this
I said it
cost
wrong.
would go in, would go into place right away. I mean,
Actually, I struggled with it till you started talking about it last meeting, and you got me a little more comfortable with the assessment with the
and I
needs,
think,
so-
it's unfair it's not unfair, it's a bad choice of words. You can look at it like, we're the bad guys that increase it, but for so many years, you had commissions without the intestinal fortitude to do it. And so unfortunately, it falls on us. I think it's our duty to not just provide the tools and the capital for our department. I think we need to be able to service our county. I mean, I think that this is our responsibility, and it sucks to be us right now. But I think it takes much more courage to do the right thing sometimes than it is and take the political hit, because it should never be about politics,
So, ma'am,
especially
can you-
with public safety. It just shouldn't.
Can you let me know which, I'm going to go through these items, can you let me know which option you're going to hit at? And are you going to do an option? You're willing to do an option?
I believe
I'm sure.
option one gets us where we need to be as far as your direction.
Okay.
I'm just asking Frank a question, sorry.
Oh.
Option one gets us where we need to be with the direction that we were given as far as you moving forward with management.
Yes, the direction that the board has given us previously, as well as what was discussed at the workshop, and the parameters that different commissioners said, Commissioner Lober, other commissioners said at that workshop, we would be able to accomplish that at at option one, and we could do it at an accelerated rate more quickly and do more if it was at option two.
Okay, I have Commissioner Lober and Smith, and I'm gonna, you turned your light off?
No.
Put it back on. Lober, Smith, Tobias, and then we're going to go ahead and see if we can't get a motion. Commissioner Lober?
And I don't want to say that, that we will have needs, critical needs that are going to be unfunded if we don't go with any of the options or if we go with a lower option. But if you look at this, what's been done is both the staff and the capital portions have been aggregated together. So the fact is, even if you're comfortable with where things are on the staff side, and I think, certainly the goals that have been laid out are accomplished, at least in large part, by either of the options, we still need, I believe, to at least prioritize that infrastructure side, just as the commission was willing to allocate a lot toward the EOC. These firehouses are just as important. I think it goes without saying that, we want both, employees that are compensated fairly and appropriately, not the lowest pay in the county or the area, maybe not the highest, but certainly in a reasonable competitive salary. I, for one, when we're talking about EMS calls being responded to, if we have a fire medic, whether they're responding on a fire truck or whether they're responding in an ambulance, and if I said it in the prior meeting, I apologize for being repetitive, but some folks are just watching this for the first time. The fact is, I don't think any of us would want working on our parents or those of us that are lucky to have at least one grandparent alive. We don't want someone that's a fire medic who's anxious to get out of there, who has, the lowest pay in the area or among the lowest pay in the area, who's simply itching to jump into another option that's not yet available. But I think we can truly make an impact, not just for a year or two, but for the next 7+ years, and this is the time to do it. So, I appreciate certainly any increase that the other commissioners are willing to go for. But for me, I'll certainly support option 2 if someone makes a motion. I was hoping to do that 2+ that I discussed. Obviously, that's off the table. But I do not, at this point, feel comfortable supporting option 1 based on some concerns about really putting ourselves in the right position, not just now and for the next couple of years, but for 7+ years out.
Okay, Commissioner Tobias, before you do Commissioner Tobias hit on this earlier. We are getting another $117 million of the CARES Fund, and actually this will also probably cover lost revenue. So I think we're going to have some funds come available to help with a lot of the items you guys have to do out there. And I just want to mention too, option 1 isn't a little option. It's a big chunk of change, it's $7.2 million. And I'm just really blessed that we're able to do this right now. So, and I get your point, Commissioner Lober, but option 1 is still a pretty good option here. So Commissioner Tobias, sir.
Thank you very, very much. And this is just a question since I've already voiced my opinion. Mr. Vacate, the $11.6 million that would still be allocated out of the public safety fund outside of the $20 million that we just allocated for, can you explain where that money would go?
The 1.6 million?
The public safety fund. So we had whatever, the 22 million, we had the fire set aside 11.6 million.
Okay.
Can you explain where that money will be going? Because I imagine that we might get some questions. Why are you increasing 30% or 29% and you're allocating an additional $11.6 million?
What we're talking about, the fire assessment, really deals with part of fire rescue, the part of fire rescue that provides fire services to certain cities that contract with us in the unincorporated area. We provide, as you heard the chief and Colonel Wallace say, EMS, ALS services, transport countywide. We use different funding, not the fire assessment, different funding funds that. That's general fund as well as ambulance fees, and the money that you are referring to, that $11.6 million, that funding would be allocated for infrastructure and capital on the EMS ALS side of the house. That's different than the fire assessment side of the house, which pays for stations where our trucks are located, as well as for fire engines and related equipment. And so those are two separate pots of money.
Yeah, just to be clear, Madam Chair. So Commissioner Lover mentioned that many of our stations were, and I don't know, I haven't been to enough to make that, so I'll trust him on that. So none of the $11.6 million that has been allocated for that fund can be used to help fix those or modernize or help those stations, is that correct, or can it?
Those would be general fund dollars, which which are allocated to fire rescue, and we anticipate using on anything that's related to the EMS ALS side of the house for capital or infrastructure.
Okay, for fire stations, in other words, where those trucks park.
Where we have ambulances, for example.
And one more question, Madam Chair. Colonel, how many fire stations do we have that have ambulances versus those that don't have transport?
Making me do public math again,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner. Chief, we have 35 total stations.
32 total stations. We have 17 engines, 5 ladder trucks. So we have roughly 18 that are dual house, which means they have an ambulance in it
Okay.
and a fire engine in it. We have 2 that are single engine houses, which are paid for out of the fire assessment, and then pardon my math, roughly 11 that are ambulance-only stations.
So in other words, about half of that, somewhere in the neighborhood of half of that, them could fit that criteria that Mr. Abate was talking about?
Roughly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For me, it always comes down to, if I need you guys at 2 o'clock in the morning, or somebody needs you guys at 2 o'clock in the morning because they have a grandfather that's having a heart attack or their house has caught fire, I don't think there's too many people in this room or in the county itself that really care much if we charge them $6 a month or $7 a month or $9 a month. They just want you there. And they want competent people to be there. They want people that care to be there. And they want top-notch quality equipment to make sure that if you arrive in time to greet an individual that's having a heart attack and they're alive, that you're going to be able to get them to the hospital in that same condition and let the hospital take over from that point. So from that perspective, and again, I haven't decided where I want to go, but Commissioner Lober made a good point. If we go for the higher option, we can always reduce it. So I would be in favor of going for the higher option at this point in time.
You mean during the budget?
Right. The option 2.
Well, that option 1 and 2, well, I guess it does do that. I guess, Frank, how do we do that? If they want to go with a higher fund, because option 1 and option 2 actually prorates the amount of funds to get it up to a certain amount, correct? It accelerates the time frame. It'll be the same amount, it just accelerates it. It'll all be there in year 1 instead of it being there in year 3.
Yeah, and I don't want, it's just allocating how much will be available within the department. What actually happens with those funds will be something we will be dealing with through the budget process, through the union negotiation process. So those are separate items we'll deal with later.
Did you see the difference in the 2 percentages for household and businesses? Yeah. If we could, again, you guys will have to make a vote on this, but if we could do it easily like that, but it's going to be pretty painful on the businesses as it is. And I think just that 5% difference there of having it increase in 2 years, and I know you guys will love it anyways, because we haven't given you anything for years. So it's up to y'all. Someone would make a motion and make a vote.
Move to go with option 2.
Okay, I have a motion for option 2 and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. And not that I wouldn't have passed option 1 for y'all, so the option 2 does pass with Commissioners Pritchard and Tobias and objection. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I would just say, I would rather us have that option 2, at least for public notice purposes, and we can always, I'm not sold on option 2 yet, but I like the idea of being able to have that flexion.
It's going to be painful with the notices, so either
It's
way,
gonna
we
be
might as well
yeah,
take the
I mean,
hit, so.
Again, it's sad that this kind of falls on us because of
I know.
just failure to act in the past and just irresponsible spending of reserves because you had no other option.
I know. We know.
So
all
it's kind of
fairness,
disappointing.
We get hit with everything we have to do that's an increase too. So you guys, good job, y'all.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just a little bit of cleanup. I'd also like, and I can just make it a separate motion to make it clean, to approve action 2 and action 3 as set out, separate
I'm
from the
going
options.
to do that in just a second. Is that all right? That's right?
Sure.
Okay. So now we're going to move to the next part of the item that you want done. So I need a motion to pass, let me find it right here.
Action 2 and action 3?
Right, I'm trying to find the wording on it. Okay, approve the fire assessment notice for owners.
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, passes 5-0. Okay, action 3 to set the date, and they want to try a tentative 20 April 2021. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lober. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to move into the board discussions of redistricting. I think Commissioner Tobias, you brought this up? Yes, ma'am. Okay, sir.
Thank you, and I want to thank you for your leeway as chair when I got on my soapbox for the open container.
Haven't got one of those in a while. Kind of enjoyed
that
it. So.
more was for someone who happens to be in my office than myself. He will be more disappointed than what I will. But this, and I don't say this very often, this is very important to me as not only a person, but as a legislator. And I think it's important before we move forward, certainly to mention some things that will guide, hopefully, the appointees that I have. And I would love to see buy-in from the entire commission. But I ask as you leave this chamber to look on the walls of the pictures of the people that have gone before us. You will see something pretty unique. The fact that it's a bunch of white folks. In fact, you will only see two people that have not been white. And what this does is brings up two important issues. First, there's a moral issue of having implicitly excluded minorities from being represented on the board. While we are still awaiting the official 2020 census from the federal government, we have 2019 estimates. And if we look at Brevard County, 26% of people, or more than 158,000, are not white. African Americans make up 10.8, Native Americans make up 0.5%, Asians make up 2.6, Hawaiians 0.1, two or more races 2.8, and Hispanics or Latinos make up 10.9. Ensuring that this population is fairly represented, regardless of political affiliation, is fundamental to our democracy and, in fact, trust in local government. Second, there is a legal issue on not having met the goals set out by the Brevard County Charter. The charter reads in Section 2.2, and I quote, preserve several municipalities in geographic cohesion, racial or ethnic minority communities from fragmentation. We don't preserve municipalities right now. For example, Palm Bay is split between districts 3 and 5, Melbourne 3, 4, and 5, Cocoa 1 and 2, Rockledge 2 and 4, West Melbourne 3 and 5. Historically, this committee has focused on such trivial things as ensuring that each district has beach coastline. It is my belief that ensuring all citizens are represented is far more important than making sure we represent some portion of the beach. The intent of this effort is not to draw any particular person into a district, or more importantly, not draw any particular person out of a district. I won't be here anymore. I don't plan on running for the commission ever again. But I've made a commitment to my appointees, one who is the chair of the National Congress of Black Women, as well as a couple lifetime members of the NAACP, that I would not vote for any redistricting plan that does not ensure that a minority candidate has an equitable shot at winning an election to this board, and I tend to keep that commitment. So in closing, I hope that my fellow board members will join me in making a commitment that they will not vote for a redistricting plan that continues to disenfranchise minority citizens of Brevard County, and then instead will vote for a redistricting plan that will ensure that they have a fair shot at being represented on this board. Obviously, we're waiting for the federal government data, but until we get there, I just wanted to be extremely clear on where I hope my appointees will be, and I've had this discussion, and I think, again, if you watch some of the old tapes, we spent more time talking about beaches than we did people that make up a significant portion of this county. So I just wanted that to be extremely clear, that this was no bias towards one person. This was just more equity towards everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair, for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, is that an old light? Commissioner Zonka, is that an old light?
Probably, but I can comment on.
Okay, well, I got Commissioner Lober too, so,
Okay, go ahead.
okay, Commissioner Lober?
Just a few things, and I know that one of my redistricting committee appointees has put in a public comment card to speak on this, but a few things that I do want to mention. There is a really good, and I would just suggest to you all, if you've not done so at this point, run by your individual appointees, a suggestion, or if you want to twist their arms harder than that, there's a really good webinar that's available for free that was put on by the Florida League of Cities, it looks like here. If you go to www.gotostage.com/channel/FLCITIES. So www.gotostage.com/channel/FLCities. No space, nothing like that. And if you search for redrawing council districts, the law and best practices, you get a really good hour-long webinar. I've watched it. Fritz in my office has watched it. All of my appointees have told me they've watched it. In fact, one came to my office to watch it with me. It gives you a lot of good info on what you have to consider, what you can't consider, and what you are permitted to but not required to consider. The other thing I've done with all of my redistricting appointees, I've given them a wide format print of my district, a wide format print of the county itself, so 30 or 36-inch print, by whatever length that it corresponds to, keeping it in scale, showing all of the districts in the county, showing the cities in both the District 2 map and also in the county map. I found that seems to be helpful. My redistricting appointee, though, approached me a little while ago with an interesting idea, and it may actually be conducive. It certainly is not mutually incompatible with what Commissioner Tobias suggested, of instead of simply drawing a 5-district county, considering drawing a 5-district county and then also having the redistricting committee provide us a second option in addition to a 5-district option of a 7-district option, so that they have greater representation in the local areas. So instead of having 115 or so thousand people, 120,000 people under each commissioner, we cut that number back pretty substantially so people have more representation. I've been getting together with staff's help a lot of info that I think is relevant, and I think some of which he'll likely find relevant as well, to determining whether or not that's something worth doing, including what the cost is, salary comp, utilities, things of that nature, rent costs, if that applies, to adding an additional commission office, or in this case 2, as well as the harder to quantify items like the additional strain it'll put on our department heads and county manager, assistant county managers, county attorney. Just because they're costs doesn't mean that the benefits don't necessarily outweigh them. I'm not in either boat at this point. I think it's an interesting idea. I know that he's thrown in that public comment card, so I just, with your permission, Madam Chair, give him a few minutes to speak on.
I don't have a public comment.
Oh, has he not put one in yet? Oh, I guess they're working on it. I apologize. But I can give you his info in the meanwhile if it helps.
Okay, well, maybe in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Sir, yes. Commissioners, any more comments? Okay. Okay. Commissioner Smith, and then Commissioner Zonko was first.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Ma'am, go ahead.
I mean, I'm glad you put this as an agenda item, but you probably could have saved this for your board report, just because I thought you were going to surprise us with some sort of action item, because that's usually what we have for the agenda. While I agree with you as far as representation, I think that that's great. I think as a commissioner, we have a duty to represent all minorities, everyone in the community. However, I get a little nervous when you at least imply the idea of drawing out a district specific to a minority group, because I think that kind of defeats the purpose. It more isolates that group than anything. And as far as the beaches go, it was my understanding that commissioners, not District 1 obviously, but commissioners had a piece of the beach, so not one commissioner had the beach, so nothing gets done on the beach if only one commissioner, or if the beach is only represented by one. So I want a fair process. I want all representatives. We've appointed other minorities to different boards when they accept it, but as far as, looking at the walls in here, it's a shame that more minorities don't run for office. But we've got good representation. We have other parties finally coming to the forefront and taking office. Look no further than Palm Bay. Their council is primarily has minorities. So I think we're finally coming around to including more different ethnic groups as far as politics. But you can't make somebody run for office if they don't run. So that's a whole other separate ballgame. But that's all I want to say about that, because I don't ever want it, painted in a poor manner to suggest that Brevard County is full of a bunch of racist people that want to redistrict, because that's, of course, not the case. I mean, I appointed, my appointees weren't, all of one minority like yours were. However, mine have all been state representatives, and they've been through the process, so I trust their background and their knowledge with the subject. So that's sort of how my selection was chosen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just like to, with respect to where the conversation's going here and the size of this county, when I got here in '86, I think there were like 270,000 people, and now we've got about 604,000. So we've had a huge increase. As I bounce around the state, I typically will reach out to a commissioner in the county that I'm jet skiing in or visiting, and a number of them have at-large. They'll have, like, for example, I think it's Manatee County. They have about 280 to 290,000 people. They have 7 commissioners. They have 5 districts and 2 at-large. So that's something that could be thought of, too, going forward. I don't know how that would be done. I don't know if you have to change the charter. I don't know, but you would have to change the charter. But, it's just something to think of. It would give the county residents more representation. Just a thought.
Okay, that's an interesting thought. You can also downsize. I was just joking with that, but okay, a little bit. I understand it. I put 3 wonderful men on this board, and I just kind of said, don't forget about the women. So, I think they're going to, I don't know, they're wonderful people. Since you start talking about this, the city council, I think they now have 2 African-American men on ours, and they got 2 women. So I think I'm starting to see a lot more diversity, where we're from. And I guess Fisher was before me, and now that you mentioned that, he was African-American. And then we get to come along as women. So I think we have a lot of positive changes that are going forward. There's probably a lot of things that needed to be addressed, and thank goodness people are maybe realizing that they need to treat people a little bit better. I don't understand why you get treated differently. If you're human, you should get treated very respectfully. But we do have to address the lower income areas. And up in some of our districts, I've kind of talked to them about addressing the areas that have more of stormwater concerns, because I'm already heavily loaded with that. And if I get more loaded up with it, District 1's going to become very expensive. So those are the things I'm looking at as well as we're doing this. But yeah, this is an interesting conversation. I actually thought we were going to have an action item as well. So yeah, Commissioner Tabaya, you're up next, and then I'm going to call this little gentleman that's here to come speak. And
thank you, Madam Chair. I just hope that I'm asking for action to come out of this. We all can talk about equity, but we actually have the opportunity to do something about it. There was more time. Again, I watched hours of tape spent about representing the beaches, specifically in the Atlantic, by somebody who was under FBI investigation and entered a plea deal to get a certain district drawn with a large portion of overwhelmingly Republican white voters. Listen to the tapes. You will not hear minority representation more than 2 or 3 times. You will hear beach 15 times that amount. I feel bad for people that don't look like us and come up here in front of this microphone.
do you think one of us have an issue right now with our appointees that you think we might need to look at, or?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I have absolutely, I'm sure they're wonderful people. I don't know who they are, in all honesty.
Okay.
I'm just asking.
I've kind of looked at all yours.
Okay,
So.
you were more than welcome.
I did.
I hope you did. When we, I'm just asking that as we have these discussions and we move forward, follow the charter. Unfortunately, as I'm sure Commissioner Zonka knows, the constraints that are a state legislature because of a constitutional amendment put on there are completely different than those that the charter places on us. She was referring to the cracking and packing mentality. This is an opportunity where I've spoken with leaders of the minority community that are interested in getting a district that is packed. And while Commissioner Lober, I haven't seen that, I look forward to seeing that, but you can go do this right now. It's districtbuilder.org. You can look at each precinct in Brevard County by representation of ethnic minority, and you can build a district that is contiguous as well as equal. I've done this. So I just ask that instead of we put these platitudes out, Palm Bay's got 2 minorities, and,
It's actually more.
Titusville's got, 6, or whatever the heck it
Actually,
is.
I think I get to take more of you guys' stuff.
It's
so.
absolutely wonderful.
I know.
That we do something as a board, because historically, it doesn't look very equitable based on the population that we represent. And we have the opportunity to do something, not just talk about it, but to draw a district
I kind of
that
think
allows that to
we are
happen.
with our board members, but I think looking back the past few years, there's been a nice variety of people. I do, Commissioner Tobias. I'm just, as a female, when we first got started in this, I was kind of excited that we got elected.
Yeah,
But-
I've never been a female. However, I think the
Yeah.
stresses that a female faces are different than
Except when
what
you're gonna be
an
Catwoman.
African-American may face, or somebody of the
Well, I know,
Hispanic or
it's all
Latino.
wonderful getting it all in. I mean, my family's so intermixed with everything. So, I mean, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but
That's the point. That's the point. These are implicit biases. We don't get it.
I don't know if I agree with you on that. I don't know that I have that same concept. Maybe you do. I don't. I mean, I feel very confident that I am very comfortable with my community and represented. I'm very much in touch with them. I'm out there on the ground with them. So I can see where you're saying this could be a problem, sir, but I don't think it's an across-the-board problem right now with you guys.
And if we
unless you
looked at
think
it from
there
a
is.
statistical method, we
Maybe-
could do. You're a person of science. If we looked at the number of people and we looked at how they were represented based on the
Maybe
population
40 or
of today.
50 years back, but I mean, the last few commissions have been pretty consistent, except you guys are all kind of white right now. But I don't know where we're going with this right now. I'm getting a little lost in it, so I'm going to let Commissioner, okay, that's me why I'm getting
That's
lost.
what it is, and it's cute, the previous redistricting that you brought up, but I'm glad you're so passionate about this now, because you've lived in this county for a long time. We spent probably more time talking about removing a Puerto Rican flag from a beach than we spent about redistricting. So I want to see what comes back from the redistricting board and see what they bring to this commission, but as far as I'm concerned, the only direction I'm going to give them is to move forward fairly. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, does anybody have any more comments? You ready to move on?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
No, I just want to echo a little bit of what Commissioner Zonka said, but maybe say it in my own way. I can tell you the 3 people that I've put on, I trust them to have the integrity to do the right thing with respect to their decisions and the recommendations that they make. I'm not going to say that any of you don't have an equally diverse group, but, one of the folks that I put on is half Taiwanese and a female. I don't know in a particular commissioner's eyes if that's better or worse than being of a different ethnicity or a different gender. But with respect to the comment that was made over playing the minutes or playing the audio from the prior meeting, where redistricting for a majority-minority district may have only been mentioned a couple of times. And if I'm misstating that, I apologize. I'm just going from memory at this point. But the beach was stated countless times. If they're operating in a way that's absolutely blind to ethnicity, some may say that's a good thing, some may say that's a bad thing. Really, that's a subjective question. If they're really so far from being racist that it doesn't even occur to them and it's not a factor in their decision, you may say that's great or you may say that's terrible. We have the same issue, at least with the Florida bar, with folks that apply for gubernatorial appointment to serve as a judge when a judge doesn't finish their term for one reason or another. And oftentimes, I can tell you, the Judicial Nominating Committee doesn't get a ton, depending on the district you're in, a ton of applicants that are of members of a particular minority group. And there are some that say, well, they don't apply because of this reason, or we should artificially favor those that do apply and appoint some that perhaps don't have the same qualifications. All of this, it's a subjective question in terms of what you think is fair. I don't know that there's a real objective answer in terms of, well, it has to be done this way. Certainly the direction that I would give to my appointees, though, and I would hope I don't think they need it by any means, Don't intentionally disenfranchise anyone, and just be conscious of the impact that your decisions make on those folks that may be members of particular communities that aren't in the majority. If it ends up resulting in a district that's majority minority, then God bless. If it doesn't, then it is the way that it is. But to me, I don't want folks discriminating for or against anyone on the basis of their skin color, their religion, their national origin, their gender, any of that stuff. I think it's totally inappropriate, and it's antithetical to my values. So if it happens to be that we don't have enough folks of certain minority groups applying to run or trying to run, perhaps we should do better as a community and encourage them to run. But I don't know that this is the fault of the redistricting committee necessarily. Yes, anecdotally, I see a lot of white faces there. I agree with that. But just as was mentioned, you've got to have the folks run in order to be elected. If they don't run, that's an issue in and of itself. So, in the interest of not getting too circular, I think I'll just leave it there.
Commissioner Zonka.
And I'll just say, I'd be really interested to look at your dozens of committee appointments to see if you have minorities represented well in those committees, because I think it's important, if we're going to have that representation from our community, from that large population, that we revisit those appointments to see how many white males we have as opposed to minorities, to make sure that we're fair across the board.
You know what, I got to just, as a little anecdote here for Move Forward, I think I just got that word from you. I put 3 wonderful men on my boards, just wonderful men. They're smart, they care about District 1. And then I got a call from the Republican Party just fuming that I would put Democrats on a board. And I was thinking, you got to deal with, everybody with this and their cultures. Now we're dealing with party lines with everybody being so mad at each other. And so I got a little irritated, and I just answered back with, they're not all Democrats. It's just, you guys, we've just got to do the best for the community and just pick wonderful people to move forward. And I think we probably should get off this topic now, but I think you guys are wonderful people. I know you care about other people, and I hope everybody is able to do the best job they can representing their community. And I hope that the Lord raises up a lot more leaders as we move forward. And I forgot to do item J5. Ms. Bentley sent me a text. So I'm going to need to see if we can get a motion to accept. Yes, sir.
I don't know if you want to have the gentleman who put
Oh,
the
I'm
public
sorry,
comment card
yes.
in.
Can I bring him during public comment now? Will you wait just a moment? Let me do this other thing real quick. Okay, can I get a motion to, okay, I have a motion to approve the grant. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lober. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, passes 5-0. Mr. Joseph Gattel?
Josiah, no.
He didn't spell it that way.
Is it Joseph?
Josiah. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I have been appointed by Commissioner Lober to the Redistricting Board, and one of the ideas that I had as I began to address the issues that will be coming up in this particular redistricting is that there may be a need for 7 districts within the next 10 to 20 years. Over the past 30 years, we have experienced an average of about 22% population growth within the county, much of that being concentrated in several districts 4 and districts 3, that they just have continued to blossom, continued to grow. This began kind of a journey looking at what projecting out those districts would look like population-wise, and we could be looking at up to a 10 to 20% differential if population growth continues within these particular districts to be on the path that it has been historically. And so the option of 7 districts began rolling around in my head. I looked at several other counties around the state. Certain counties of similar size tend to have about 60 to about 100,000 people per county commission district. We are of the 5 county commission district model, which is the most common among the Florida counties, but certainly not the only exclusive. If we look at metropolitan areas, we see as many as 19 county elected officials, with several of those being at large, as Commissioner Smith mentioned previously. The reasons behind kind of splitting into 7 districts is it continues to present an opportunity for proper representation of diverse views. We have many different areas when I was visiting a ecological reserve, we have 6 different environments represented in our county because we're 82 miles long. We have interests that are not the beaches, such as the orange groves, the agricultural concerns to the west. It would present an option to give more representation to specific interests within the county, not just or racial or ethnic minorities, but these actual industries within the county. It would present the option for us to have a majority-minority district if we so chose. It would present the option for us to do many different things to keep our representation accurate and close to the people. It would result in, I believe, this time, my math is a bit fuzzy, but between 60 and 70,000 people per district, which would be much more in line with what other similar counties have. I thank you for your time and your consideration of this idea. I would just love the opportunity to bring this up now while we can refer it to our charter commission. This is a unique opportunity because we are delayed with the delivery of data to the redistricting committee until November, is my understanding, to present this to the Charter Commission first before we are bound at the redistricting committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Good timing, sir. Yes, sir.
Quick question. I'm sure you're aware, we've had 435 representatives for almost 100 years. Late 1920s. At that time, we had about 115, 120 million Americans. So we've gone in population 2.5 times from what we were, and yet we still have the same number of representatives. In your opinion, why is it different in Brevard County looking at, because I'm always skeptical when anyone tries to increase the size of government, and this literally is increasing the size of government by 40%. And why not 11 if you want it more diverse?
I definitely understand the concern that you raise. I am a small government conservative myself, but my goal is to keep representation closer to the people. As the county commissioners mentioned previously, we have trouble with stormwater allocation. We have trouble with other things that are not necessarily being represented by 5 county commissioners. We'll have a geographically massive district for whatever occupies the space of District 1, because it will begin to continue gobbling up more and more population, which would probably be Cocoa or something along those lines, which increases the concentration of funds that would be needed on one small geographic area, rather than breaking it up a little bit more to keep focus on the people that are being represented.
Madam Chair? And I'm sure you're aware of the annexation of cities on county land over the last 40 or 50 years. They can do it without county approval. We just have to sign it up. So actually, government has gotten closer to the people as the size of local governments, being cities, have increased. How does that impact your plan to increase government by 40%?
I think the issue that you raise is an accurate one, but if we look at the current state of city governments and whether they are necessary, I know several representatives in this area.
You had me there. If you want to do away with local government, I'll vote.
I think there's certain things that at the city level, we've seen corruption, like the Melbourne area, in the Palm Bay area recently, and had questions about those. We've seen in Newport Richey across the state where cities have been dissolved. I think this is an insurance factor of keeping districts smaller, keeping commissioners more attentive to the people that they're representing. Again, this would take them from projected, by my math, about 120 to 130 by the end of redistricting this time, when we're redistricting again, to representing about between 60 and 80,000 people, which is a much more manageable amount of people to be representing than continually growing. It's shrinking the size of what you're representing by about a third.
I understand the math. I just don't understand how Congress has been able to do it with a 250% increase, and we've had, you said, what, a 30 or 40% increase?
Roughly speaking, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't understand I'm just always skeptical when someone brings up a plan that's going to cost, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars with no ending in sight. You're more than welcome to bring up these out-of-the-box ideas. I'm sure the disenfranchised minorities will be very excited to hear your plan.
Thank you, sir. Frank, how long do you think it is before we'll get the census data?
The end of September.
okay, that'll be interesting. You know, something, I know we don't put this into play a lot, but there's a difference in managing the incorporated and the unincorporated areas as well. So that comes into play as you guys are looking at those numbers too. I know it's with voters, but when you have a lot of cities in there, it does take some of the pressure off of us too as commissioners. So let us move to board reports.
I believe this item J8.
J8, oh, yes, that was added on. I wrote it in pencil. Sorry, Tad, you've been waiting all night, huh?
Good evening, Commission. Item J8 is request for the Board of County Commissioners to grant final plat approval and authorize the chair to sign final plat for Pioneer Point. Normally, these items are the consent items, but due to the construction.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Smith. Second by Commissioner Zonka. She beat you quietly. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, sir. We're going to move into board reports. I don't have any more public comments. County Manager.
I have no report.
Okay. County Attorney.
No report.
Commissioner Lober.
Couple things. I'm going to take my face mask off here. I'm a good 10, 12 feet away from the nearest person. Couple things. I have looked actually since Commissioner Tobias brought up the interesting final point, or one of the interesting final points in the prior discussion on the alcohol ordinance. In the past decade, I don't see that I've ever represented anyone on a, thank you, on a county ordinance related to alcohol. I have represented folks on county ordinances. So this particular ordinance, if history holds true, even if I opened up shop in full bore today and started taking new clients, it would, in all likelihood, be at least 10 years before that would ever have any financial impact on me. Now that said, okay, on to the serious stuff. I do have a motion, and I provided the clerk's office copies of this, so I'm going to try to stick as tight to it as I can so that I hopefully make their life a little bit easier. This deals with some concerns that were raised. I had multiple medical providers reach out to me from separate groups that were interested in being added or getting the ability, I should say more accurately, to vaccinate folks. And they essentially wanted to ensure that the county does everything that we're able to do to assist them in that. And if that ends up involving having to contract with the county, I want to give Frank the ability to, not to require him to do that, but to give him the ability to make that happen. So I'll go ahead and read this. If anyone wants me to reread it, I'll be happy to do that. So the motion is as follows: authorize but not require the county manager to execute any reasonable contract or contracts necessary to ensure the highest justifiable availability of COVID-19 vaccine providers within Brevard County, provided any such contract or contracts has or have been reviewed by the county attorney and no critical concerns are raised by the county attorney. Such contracts may exceed the ordinary $100,000 limit of authority placed upon the county manager without additional authorization by the BOCC. It is contemplated that the county manager will confer with the county's public safety director and/or the county's emergency management director so that they may coordinate with FDOH and Brevard to ensure that any such contracts fit within the overall FDOH vaccination strategy in order to make the most efficacious use of the $2 million the BOCC already allocated to increase vaccination capability and availability throughout the county. Contracts contemplated by this motion may not exceed this $2 million absent approval by the BOCC. This motion further contemplates that the county manager shall be authorized to undertake all actions necessary to effectuate this direction, including but not limited to executing any necessary and appropriate budget change requests.
Commissioner Lober, Commissioner Zonka has her light on, but I'm probably going to have to read that before next meeting and then bring it back up if you wouldn't mind, sir. Commissioner Zonka?
Sure.
That's just what I was going to say. I mean, I appreciate the effort of putting it together, but I'm not going to support anything that I don't have in front of me or that hasn't had a chance to vet.
I probably will do it. I'm just going to have to look at it because
Madam Chair?
we trust that face, but yes, sir.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to push one way or the other. I will say one of the physicians that reached out had concerns about being able to vaccinate prior to, I think it's the 23rd is our next meeting. Is that right, or am I, Frank?
Our next meeting is the 23rd.
Yeah, I think they were concerned that they get in the running prior to that. So I figured I'd put this out there. I did send it, I don't know, earlier this afternoon to Frank, to Matt Wallace, and to several of the other staff members, John Scott, Stephen Darling. So I don't know if they've had a chance, quite honestly, to review it or not, but I thought, given that there was concern expressed with respect to that, that I would simply bring it. But that said, I can go ahead and email it out. Obviously, since I've read it here, it's not that there's any sunshine issue. I'm just literally giving you a transcript of what I just read.
Thank you. And then I'll ask some more questions too. Commissioner Zonka, is that new?
Yeah, this, I think, goes into the item that is supposed to come to us March 23rd, and I don't want to, I have legitimate and serious concerns about moving forward with a private entity who stands to profit from COVID vaccine, considering we have other hospital systems who are administering the vaccine for free, and have committed to that. And I understand why, if they get an allotment of vaccines that they can't manage or whatever, then we could use a private contract. But my concern is what's to stop us, and who are we to choose which private contractor we use? Because then realistically, we should probably RFP this thing and open it up to every private medical facility or provider out there to see who can do it cheaper, see who can, but I'm not for, and I don't care what kind of profit the place makes. I'm never going to support anything that's going to pay somebody to give COVID vaccines to anybody. That's just kind of where I'm sitting, at least on the item on the 23rd. So I guess it's more of a message to staff to get that information, because, any other agency could sue us, technically. I would think any other private agency could say, I want the same opportunity. If you have overage or over and above what the other agencies can't do for free, that's sort of where we're headed, correct, Frank?
Commissioner, we prepared and sent out a rather...
And I read it.
Extensive, excuse me?
I read the email you sent out, and that's sort of my concern.
Right.
So it goes a little further than the email to express the concern about, I get that it's done as a last resort sort of thing, and if unable to provide the service for free, but I have an issue with a company making profit off of the COVID-19 vaccines.
Commissioner Lober.
Madam Chair, with respect to that, I don't disagree with you, Commissioner Zonka. In fact, only one of the physicians or groups that reached out to me had any plan to charge at any location. And I believe, and if I'm misstating it, I apologize, this is just the best of my recollection, that was for one of 2 or 3 locations that they were proposing. And with respect to that, to their chief physician, I don't know what his C-level title is, but their number 1 physician, and then also to their lobbyist, I sent an email expressing concern that there be price parity. I don't want to, you raised an interesting concern. I'm not so much concerned necessarily about getting sued by the other providers, but I am concerned that if we set a precedent that we're willing to pay, I think it was $20 per shot for that one particular location, that now the other providers may say, oh, well, us too. So I agree that is a concern. And in part, that's why when I phrased this and wrote this contemplated or the drafted motion, it said authorized but not required, because I don't want to put Frank in a position or anyone in a position where they're obligated to set a precedent where we're going to be driving up costs for ourselves to get this done. So I agree with you in short.
And we could always have an emergency commission meeting, and that's not always how we want to go, but if we have more vaccines than we could possibly distribute through the DOH and through our hospital system partners, then we can talk about it then, but I don't want to arbitrarily have any kind of contract in place with anybody to do.
Yeah, and what staff has prepared and sent to you, Commissioner, we were only looking to bring it back for the board for its consideration, not
Yes.
from a staff level.
Exactly, but I just wanted to kind of make my position clear on that.
Okay,
And that's all I have, Madam Chair, for board reports.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Tobias. No report, Madam Chair. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before you, I have given you some information regarding the allocation for CARES funds approved by this board back on November 5th. I charged Jill Hayes, Kathy Wall, and staff to come up with the companies that, according to their parameters, qualified. We dispersed those funds. We still have roughly $1 million left. So I asked them to go back and look at these businesses again with the idea that some businesses lost hundreds of thousands and some lost 30 to 50,000. So rather than make some of the lower amounts whole, I wanted to focus on the businesses that had lost more money. So that's what they did here. So because I'm coming back to you, I need another approval. So
I support you.
These are basically the funds remaining in District 4's allocation, so I need an approval to disperse these funds.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
So these businesses were provided by the county, or did you give the county this list of businesses?
No, I had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
It's the county did it,
So these were the top businesses that had the biggest losses?
right. And I want to commend, I know I've said it numerous times, but the amount of time that Jill and Kathy Wall has spent on this is just mind-boggling. And I could call them with a question, and they always had the answer. And if they didn't, they got it to me very, very quickly. And I put this whole thing on them, and they did it, and God bless you, because I couldn't have done it.
Commissioner Lober?
I just want to be clear, if I may, Commissioner Smith. So this is solely from the funds that remain in the $5 million that was delegated to you to allocate. Yeah, I said before, anything that you propose that's a lawful allocation, I'm going to support. So if you want, I can make a motion, or you can make it, and I'll second it, however you want to do it.
Yeah, I'll make the motion for you to approve this.
I'll go ahead and second it then.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Madam Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Tobias. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I made a commitment to support this as well. Can I make one final plea, Madam Chair?
You got the floor.
We're going to be about $1.5 million short on the EOC. To Commissioner Zonka's credit, she handed the money back. She got absolutely no, ribbon cutting ceremony for handing. Not that you're not running for re-election, so I don't think that's the incentive in handing this to business. But I made a commitment to you that I would support your allocation. My question to you is, if you believe handing to these businesses are more important than handing it to the EOC, that last $1.5 million or $2 million that we may be short, would you be willing to? I know this is your money, and I'll support you either way. I'm just putting in one final.
The short answer is no.
Okay.
But I will give you a reason. From my perspective, and my perspective only, this money was made available to get into the pockets, to put it into the pockets of the business people and the people that work for a living and pay rent and pay mortgages and buy cars and put their kids through school. That money, the best way, in my perspective, to do that is to funnel it to the businesses, because they've already taken it on the chin. They've lost a lot of money. The idea was to get this in their hands as quickly as possible, which would have been April or May. But obviously, we had to step very carefully because we didn't want clawbacks. We didn't want any of that aggravation. But again, from my perspective, this money needs to go to these businesses so that they can remain in business and keep their employees employed.
Madam Chair, and from your perspective, it's government's job to make up for companies that have loss in revenue?
Well, I'll just answer you with the way Trump handled it, and that's what sold me. Trump said when he authored and authorized this and sold it, he said he wasn't in favor of doing something like this, except for the fact that government shut businesses down, so it was government's responsibility to give them a helping hand to get back. So that's what this, and for me, that's what I listened to.
Good thought.
Okay. Some of the, Madam Chair, some of these, I mean, AIM Kids, Space Coast, I mean, some of these did not shut down.
No, they didn't. But conversely, the ones that did, we can't help them because they're already gone. So this is helping the people that have struggled through and tried to make it to this point.
And, Madam Chair, can I think the board made let me tell you where my issue was before in specificity. You have the Melbourne Regional Chamber, and we discussed about giving allocations to businesses that turn around and give political donations. Now, I know you're not running, so there's no nefarious intent, but the Melbourne Regional Chamber participates in political donations, and I have an issue with providing government funds to an organization that immediately turns around and give it. So I think the board, I'd have to look back, but I think we have a policy where we voted and made that a...
I think we voted it, and Commissioner Zonka and myself made a declaration not to take any campaign funds from them.
Oh, is that? I couldn't pass it, and that was it?
That was from the Business Voice.
Yes.
which receives money directly from the chambers.
Yes.
That was Business Voice.
But I don't think
Commissioner.
Commissioner Smith's in that kind of risk, so.
Well, and to your point, I didn't decide which one of these. I charged the hardworking folks that work for this county, and this is what they
I
came
was
up
putting
with.
in my 2 cents. I will support you on this if you think it's more important, because I gave you my word.
I do.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, Vice Chair Zonka.
And you can't control what members of the chamber donate to people's campaigns. I know the chamber doesn't make a chamber donation. So, I mean, if everybody's penalized for the relationships or the company they keep or the organizations they belong to, you could probably find any business where the owner has written a check to some party or some candidate. So I don't buy that. And chambers have never been notorious for getting people elected or unelected. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here, to be honest, right? If you, I mean, just saying, I don't think that they have the impact that you think, but I don't have anything. I just want to say, I hope this board in the future spends a little more time conducting serious business instead of the politicking. I think we make meetings a lot longer than they need to be, and I'm not blaming or pointing fingers at any one or two commissioners, but what I'm saying is that I hope for once we can stop being the laughingstock of people that watch these meetings and just waste time, because we do a lot of time wasting. And I think we need to learn how to be more succinct, more direct, more purposeful. That's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Smith.
Yes. I want to give the Pat update.
Oh.
Yeah, this guy, he's just amazing. He had his first visit today with the surgeon that did the work, and he thinks that he got all the cancer out of his brain, but he said you never can be sure, because if you leave a cell behind, cancer's cancer. So he will have follow-ups with radiation and chemotherapy. He'll be able to drive again starting this Friday, and this guy couldn't be happier. I'm telling you, he's just ecstatic. So, and he thanks everybody for their prayers, and keep praying.
He's precious.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's just a miracle.
We're very thankful for
And
that.
he got all those staples out. I said, didn't that hurt? Because I can't even imagine. I don't like getting stitches out. He had 35 staples in his head. They came out today. It's a piece of cake.
Yeah, I tell you what, the Lord really had his hand on him.
Oh, he surely did.
He sure did. Commissioner Zonka, I just want to piggyback on what you said. I agree. You know, I've never made myself any better by making anybody else worse. And so I would just ask that we stick to county business and maybe focus on the things that we have to do at hand. And with that, I have no agenda, and I call this meeting.
Amen. God bless.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.